The following is a program of the Santa Barbara County Education Office. To learn more, visit sbceo.org.
Susan Salcido, Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools, and I am so delighted to introduce my guest today, Kelly Hubbard, who's the Director of the Santa Barbara County Office of Emergency Management. Kelly, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting.
It is exciting. We really all of us are excited to learn more about you and the program and goals of the OEM, and you've definitely hit the ground running as somebody new to Santa Barbara County, new as our Director of the Office of Emergency Management. Viewers today have probably seen you already out in the community, sharing with them about public safety power shutoffs, recent rains, and all of the different education that you're providing. So people know you, they know the job that you have, but they may not know you as the individual. So that's where I'd like to start.
Sure.
Okay, great. So let's talk about where you were born and raised and brought up.
Oh my goodness. So I was raised and born and lived most of my life in the foothills of southern Los Angeles County, so in Glendora, and same town that my parents mostly grew up in, and so went to school there, went to Cal Poly Pomona for my undergraduate, and ended up over at Long Beach State for my master's program. First job over at City of Claremont as an intern, and that's kind of how I got into emergency management as an intern.
How it all started.
Yeah.
And all in that vicinity, really.
Yes.
All in that vicinity.
Yeah.
And so let's roll back a little bit to elementary life, junior high life, high school life. I'm so interested in school, of course. So I want to know, Kelly, how are you as a student in school?
Well, I come from a family of teachers. So my mom was a fifth grade teacher, my aunt, high school teacher, two other aunts teachers, my grandparents, both my grandparents were teachers in high school. They taught high school. So education was really big in the family.
Yes.
Grew up reading. In fact, my mom still gives us children's books, even as adults, that she thinks teaches great life lessons.
That's wonderful. I like her.
I do too, and I've passed that on. In fact, I just had an employee that was having an important life moment, and I was able to give him a children's book that talked about everyday heroes.
That's wonderful.
And so, education always a really, really big part of my life, all the way through high school.
Would you say you were an excellent student? Hardworking student?
I was in high school. I was an honors student. I did the International Baccalaureate program. I don't know if we have that up here in Santa Barbara.
We do.
Yeah. So I did IB, and very hardworking student. Definitely, both for family purposes, but also just I was an avid reader and wanting to just learn as much as I could.
That's exciting. That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And again, an opportunity just to get to know you as when you were growing up. Were you a participant in sports or other extracurricular activities as a real passion?
Yeah. So I played volleyball and soccer a little bit, and then actually I ended up having my daughter when I was in my junior year of high school.
Okay.
And so a lot of people were worried what that would do with my educational track, but I was very, very dedicated, and so finished high school in my same class, finished my IB program. I was insistent, wanted to work through that and finish with honors, and I did. And so graduated on time, and thankfully with the support of my family, very much so. My poor little brother who also supported me, but was able to really stay involved in school, stay in the honors program, stay in the IB program. I didn't continue with sports, but had that opportunity later when I got to coach my daughter instead.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Anyone who has children knows how hard it is to have a little infant and take care of them. But having that infant while you're in school, wanting to finish with your class, and having really a lot of expectations on yourself to graduate on time and continue life robustly, it says a lot about you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it definitely wasn't the easy road to choose, but it was the right road for me. And I had a school community that came around me and held me up and helped me along, and a great mentor in one of my high school teachers who was at the time had become vice principal at the high school, and so she helped guide me through that. Okay, I really want to stay in these programs. How do we make that happen? And so having that great mentor to help walk me through that and set me up.
Excellent. You mentioned a brother. So you have a brother. Any other siblings?
Nope, just the two of us.
All right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned your daughter, and I know you're really close with her.
Yes.
Let's give a shout out to her.
So Jenna Ramirez, she's actually working in the school system now. She's an athletic trainer down in Huntington Beach. And so she works with her. I think she has about 400 athletes or so that she works with in all sports all throughout the year, and is absolutely loving it. Being at that high school community level is really fun for her.
I went to school in Huntington Beach.
You did?
Yes, I did. Finished high school after moving from Santa Maria, so I'll see if I can connect with you and her after this. So let's talk about where you went to college. You mentioned it before. And what were you intending to study and why?
Wow. So I went to Cal Poly Pomona, and it's where my mom went, which is really fun. And I literally had no idea what I wanted to do. So when I was looking at classes and programs, I took out, back then, you got the actual catalog in the mail that had all of the degrees listed and all the classes required. And I literally flipped through it and looked at all the titles and said, okay, these sound interesting. And then I started looking at what classes are required for each one. And, some I was like, oh, I don't want to have to do that class. That does not sound fun.
Sure.
And so I really literally picked my program based on what was going to intrigue me and keep me interested throughout my career, my college career, and then found my career path from that.
Okay. So what were some of the things that were jumping off the page at you in that catalog that was intriguing you?
So my BA is actually in international politics with a minor in small business. And so the whole listing of classes about government. How does government work? What goes into building these community services that build and support our society, right? And then the international side was intriguing. I loved the concept of international politics, and I think I associated it with travel. So, and that desire, and even then to want to go and travel and explore the world. And so really just looking at what did those classes mean. And I didn't know what that would mean for career, right? I knew it could mean city government, local government, but maybe even national or international.
Right. And just curious, have you traveled a lot internationally?
I have. I have. Not as much as I'd like. I'm still working on getting more of that in, but definitely quite a bit of travel.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, part of then your major and studies in college was satisfied through your own travel. That's the international side. Then the government side is definitely something that you work on today.
Yes.
So I want to ask you about emergency management, because that isn't something that everybody grows up understanding how to do, what it is, or even that it is here for a community. So how did you get involved with emergency management?
So I mentioned that internship. I had an internship with the city of Claremont, and in that internship, one of the first job assignments they gave me was to update our city's emergency plan. And I thought,
it's a big job.
Yeah, and I thought, shouldn't this be done by someone who knows a little bit about this? And my boss said, probably, but we don't really have the resources, and I have a great mentor for you. And so he connected me with an individual who supported kind of the region, the area, with emergency management, and she helped guide me through that process. And from then on, I was hooked. I had this big, huge binder document. I'm like, how does this help people in a disaster? And helping to the city grow that process and put it into procedures and plans that would help the community.
So that's how it began.
That's how it began.
So an internship and planning and really systems, sounds like. So can you help trace the path from there to where you are today, which is the director of the OEM?
Right. So from there, I actually had my first fire as an intern still, assisting the city to set up what we called our EOC in a box, our function systems to set up our emergency operations center and support that. And then even as I transitioned into other departments, still continue to have a role, which gave me some variety of experience. So then I was more involved in our evacuation centers and our local assistance centers that help the community more with as they leave their homes and what resources do they need as they recover from that disaster. And with all of that, really wanted to find an opportunity to work full-time in emergency management, and that's where I found my previous position. I was there for the last 15 years.
And what was that?
Municipal Water District of Orange County. I ran a program with a really fun acronym, WEROC, Water Emergency Response of Orange County. So I coordinated all the water, wastewater agencies within the county, all of their preparing for any type of disaster, whether that's following rules and regulations, trainings, writing various plans on how they would deal with different types of events, and then all the way up to responding to, helping them with coordination, communication with fire and law, other cities, community groups, and then all the way through to recovery, where they're working on repairing and restoring their water or wastewater systems following.
That is a significant job that you had. Yes,
it was
really, really big. And in Orange County, the county, which is really, really big as well.
Yes, we had 3.2 million residents, and so between those 37 agencies, really trying to provide the best service we could, and reliability, resiliency, right? Everyone expects every time they turn their tap that water is going to come out. Right. And we want to make sure that that happens even in that disaster.
So all of that rolls up to where you are today here with us. Thankfully, we have you as
very
our
excited.
director. Yes, thank you so much. And so all that learning, internships to the position that you just described, really helps us in our community. And as I said at the very top, you really have hit the ground running, rolling up your sleeve and supporting. So one question about, since you're in that newness still, we'll call it the new for a year. How about that?
I like it.
Okay, we'll
Works
just call
for
it,
me.
yeah. So have there been some new surprises, or just in terms of the new county that you're serving?
I think the biggest in surprises, or one is it's kind of that's not new, that each community has many of the same concerns and concepts. We all are working on planning. Every day as a community, as government, there's always things we can improve upon. But then there's also the community, the same factors of how well prepared is our community. Now, something different is the resilience that's already in this community because of what Santa Barbara's gone through in the last couple of years. And so there is a very active portion of the community that's involved in emergency planning, preparedness, and a lot of different counties have that, but it's really strong here. And so that resilience is already built in a little bit. And so that's really fun to work with as an emergency manager. You have this engaged community who wants to know how they can continue to improve, right?
That's wonderful.
And so that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's great. As a resident of Santa Barbara County for a long time, it's so heartening to hear somebody who's new to our county see that as part of who we are. Yeah. And that's wonderful. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So for those who are not familiar with the Office of Emergency Management, love for you to share there's many things that you do, but what are some of the primary goals or purposes of the OEM?
So I think we have two missions. One is related to our role as a county department. And so that's how do we bring the county government, make sure the county government is prepared for any type of disaster, and try to ensure that our government services continue regardless of what that disaster is. And so that's one component.
Right.
The other component is, and this is the part that's, I think, really critical to any community, county, city level, any level of government, and that's how do we bring all of our partners together? And that's what we call our operational area component. And so that is working with the cities, the school district, the nonprofits in our communities, the water and wastewater utilities, the for-profits, whether that's utilities or small businesses, our federal partners. How do we bring all of those groups together to make sure that we're talking prior to any disaster, right? So that we have plans in place, we have communications procedures, You don't ever want it to be in the middle of a fire that you're trying to call someone and introduce yourself.
Right.
And so a big part of what we do on a day-to-day basis is building those partnerships. We might do it through things that sound really boring, like writing emergency plans or having a meeting about how do we fix some, radio system and how that works. And it seems kind of mundane when you talk about it that way, but really what all that is building a partnership. And by working on those more mundane things of day-to-day planning, hosting or providing trainings, working on communication systems. Through those, we're building partnerships that really give us the basis and our capability to respond.
Wow, that's really great. I appreciate that you bifurcated the missions,
Yeah.
goals for us and addressed both. And that the last one you were talking about, the collaboration, the coherence, really being stronger by knowing one another and working together is such a critical component. Is from an education point of view, I'll say that your office in the county of Santa Barbara does so much to not only bring educators in, but to help prioritize us in emergencies, and you prioritize everyone. There's competing priorities, but we feel that we are prioritized, and we really appreciate that, the work that you do, that coherence for the children and for the teachers and the staff and the schools. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's important that we are including the educational community in that planning because, if you think about all the students who are at school, and those parents who maybe can't get home. And we want to make sure that we're incorporating those schools into that planning, but also thinking about how that impacts those parents who are also concerned or the children who have to get back. And so it's such a critical part of our planning.
Yeah. And as a director and as a leader, you have the goals of the organization, you have the what we're doing, but you also have your how you're doing it. And it's different from director to director and leader to leader. So can you share a little bit about some of your principles or how you lead?
Sure. First and foremost, I am an open. I like to invite everyone in and get feedback and ideas, and really, if anything, it's pulling out the whiteboard and just brainstorming and really creating these open processes of discussion and collaboration. That's really where I prefer to go. I don't want to sit in a room and write a plan by ourselves, whether it's myself or my staff. I don't think the way we plan for emergencies or plan for, even if it's just putting together a training, right? Putting together a training, if I'm doing that in my own little box, then I'm not going to know whether my training in my little box actually works for others. And so it's really important to me that we're creating the most open collaborative process. And that's from the very beginning all the way through to the end. And so some of those concepts that I'm really hoping to change is that our meetings are more comprehensive in the types of agencies that we're inviting, that when we are working on plannings, we're talking about the whole community. So not just what we think of as, we don't just say, all our residents. No, our whole community. Let's talk about the students. Let's talk about those who may have access or functional needs. Let's talk about the businesses and how this impacts. And so when you talk about the whole community, it's just not our residents. It's looking at all those pictures.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that's one smidgen of a lot of different principles that you hold and in which you're leading. So I know that you've had many years in emergency management and leadership. Have there been particular highlights that you might be able to share?
So it's always a little awkward as an emergency manager because highlights tend to be disasters. But there are, I think one of the, some of the events that I've gotten to go and work on are really in terms of career growth and knowledge and expertise and what I can bring back to my community. Going to those disasters and serving and helping another community really brings back things that you can improve within where you're working at. And so, for instance, I was able to go and assist the County of Butte following the Camp Fire. I was able to work in their Joint Information Center, so helping with media relations and community events. And there was just so much happening in that community that was so unique and different to such an extensive fire and such an extensive area of impact that it really brought a lot of information. I was able to bring a lot of information back when I was at within the County of Orange, but then also now here, and I can see comparisons and such in doing that. But then if you talk about non-disaster times, I think some of the highlights are some of the times and opportunities that I've had to really bring unique and different projects to my community or my program. So one example, working for the water district, I was able to get a grant to build fuel trailers. And I knew nothing about fuel trailers. I had to educate myself. And some of the unique ways that a water utility might use a fuel trailer to, for instance, refuel a generator is on access roads, fire access roads that aren't the easiest things to get across. So then we had to do some modifications. And so it was really fun to work on this project that I knew would really enhance our capabilities and was different. No one else had done that, and afterwards I was able to share that and talk to not just water agencies, but government agencies all across the country on how we modified those and able to share our plans and how we did that.
Oh, those are great examples. I appreciate that. Some of the examples are around being creative,
yes,
and not being intimidated by something you don't know or haven't done before, right, but educating yourself around it and saying, let me learn about this and see how we can be creative around that. So that's one area, it seems. And the other one is really experiencing something, giving back, but also learning, and then bringing back to the community in which you serve. So both of those examples I really appreciate, and I know the viewers appreciate that too. And I'm thinking about shifts in emergency management. I think about, and shifts in education have been vast over the last, say, 10 years. And I think that is true for emergency management too, or 20 years, or, I think about September 11th, the Katrina, all the fires in California, all the mud flows and all of that. So it's a big question, but I'm just wondering in terms of major shifts that have occurred in emergency management because of these?
Yeah. So I think some of the shifts are related to, one is how we do communications, right? So if you talk about over the years and the decades, there's been a change in the technology alone that everyone uses, right? And so one of the major shifts in emergency management is how do we communicate to the public prior to an event and then throughout that event. And because of those changes in technology, and we still have generations who've never used some of this technology, and we have generations who are, kids that are in elementary school using technology that I haven't even used yet because they're learning things faster than some of the technology that we see. And so I think one of the biggest things that we'll continue to see shift in emergency management is communications and how do we get our messages out? Things like this, where we're working on communicating through broadcast and television and reporting. Now emergency managers are going out and they're not just doing press releases or putting information on, an A-frame in front of the grocery store, right? They're going out and they're filming on FaceTime and pushing that out via social media. And so that's going to be a big concept. How do we continue to change how we do that? I think in terms of focus, I think a lot of times we talked about in emergency management to the community is how do you prepare for that event? So, often we talk about having 3 days of supplies, having your first aid kit, 3 days of water and food, having your canned soup and your can opener and flashlights. And I think we're really going to start focusing, and I think you'll see this kind of swing of a pendulum where we're going to be really talking about resilience. So how do you not just prepare for that and just have a few days of supplies, but how do you prepare for the disaster and bring yourself, your family, and your community back to normal quickly? And that's a little different than just sitting there and saying, okay, I have some supplies for me and my family for the next couple of days, and going more into a conversation of how do we as a community come back to normal? So what can I do to contribute? How can I help my neighbor? How can I be part of an effort to help rebuild the community? And I think you're going to really see, and I think we saw it already, you saw it really start in Katrina. And I think you're going to continue to see that pendulum switch, that that change in that community mindset of government's going to come and help, and we're going to be there to support and help bring those systems and mechanisms back, but it's going to be a community effort.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And you talked about resiliency and
Yes.
such an important piece of our community, of any community. And I know, and I want to link that to something that I understand that a book that you're beginning to read,
Yes.
which is called Tribe.
Yes.
So I'll offer it back to you and how we can connect Tribe that you're reading to resiliency as a community.
Wow. Yeah. So Tribe is a book that actually my boss gave me as I started this job, and talked about taking care of our tribe. And I'm not all the way through the book yet, so I can't speak to how it ends and what it goes through, but it does talk about how tribes played a role in our society, and how different society has come, how different we are now that you can live and work from home and largely not leave. You could have very little social interaction and still be have a job and be part of a community in a way, but you're having limited social action, and that changes how we interact. And part of the book is talking about how that's impacting concepts like mental health and the concerns with depression and societal feeling broken and away from society, not part of society. And it's because we have all of this great technology and concepts that allow us to not have to integrate. We're not dependent on each other anymore to go out and hunt and gather our food and take care of the elderly and the sick in our home, and take care of the kids. And so there's this different society structure that is not allowing for greater resilience sometimes. And I think that's where this book is going, and it'll be interesting to see. But what it's really bringing back to me is the fact that it does take a community, and you talk about in education and childhood, about it takes a village, right, to raise a child. And I think that it takes a village to do emergency preparedness and management and response. And so I think that's where that book's going to get me back to. And and part of it also is about recognizing that you need to take care of your own. And so whether that's your family, or in my case, what my boss was communicating to me is it's my staff and my coworkers and the people I work with and the agencies I work with, and that's going to be my tribe who's going to help our community.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that and weaving it all together. And as we wind down with our time together, and in thinking about self-care and tribe and ensuring that we're good as a community, we're not only doing good, but we're good. So I want to turn the tables onto you and say, how are you finding an opportunity to just release some steam?
Yeah.
It's a big job that you have that we all appreciate, but how do you let it go?
Oh man. Working out is a big part of that, getting back to my family, my tribe, right? Going and visiting with my family, talking with my daughter and reconnecting, that's huge. But just getting outdoors. I'm a big outdoors person. I'm a camper, I off-road, I backpack, and so travel, going back to that international piece. So really, I think it's really important that no matter what your passion in your career is that, especially when you have that high stress or you're feeling that sense of, weight of what it is that you do, you need to get back to what those things are that you love. And so for me, that's getting outdoors, hiking on the weekends, going down to the beach and playing some beach volleyball, or just getting outside and connecting with the outdoors and my family.
That's wonderful. Kelly, thank you so much for sharing of yourself and for the work that you do and the job that you have, and for supporting the community so well, and being and serving in Santa Barbara County. Welcome again to the community, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciated.
I'm Susan Salcido, Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools. Thank you so much for joining us today for this edition of Local Leaders.